Hey there, I'm the MadCatster. Am I glad to see you here? Well, you may remember there was a TikTok sensation. She's called the TikTok Psychic, and she had a campaign where she tried to pin several crimes, horrible crimes in Idaho on a professor, and it's blown up in her face. She's being sued. We've got her bizarre response to the lawsuit. I've got the deets and all the receipts, so buckle up and let's go. I'm here with Sybil the Enforcer, and Sybil says, please like and subscribe. We're inching closer to 19,000. I know you're not subscribed. Yes, you. Please subscribe. Please like the video. It doesn't cost you anything. It sure helps us. It would make us very happy. But anyway, so you guys probably remember last year, there was a horrible, horrible crime that occurred at the University of Idaho where 4 students had their lives ended, and the police ultimately did catch a suspect, and they're pretty confident, from what I understand, that he's the guy. But there's this TikTok sensation, Ashley Gillard, who disagrees with the police and with the evidence and decided for some bizarre reason to go on this crusade against this one poor professor. And she made a whole series of TikToks where she basically was, in my opinion, making up fiction and trying to sort of have her intuition describe the whole scenario around this horrible crime. And in the process, seriously defamed the professor in question. It's so bizarre. And if you've seen any of her TikToks, you know what I'm talking about. So even after they arrested this guy, she still doubled down and keeps insisting to this day, and you're going to see in a second, she's really basically shooting herself in the foot because she can't help herself. I'm just briefly going to tell you what they're alleging. I'm sure you can guess what it is. And then I'm going to show you what happened after the plaintiff filed a motion for default judgment because Ms. Gillard did not file her answer or respond to the lawsuit. And in fact, she basically kind of mocked the lawsuit and the plaintiff in her TikToks. And now she's trying to tell the court, oh, it's not my fault that I didn't respond, and now I want to respond now that the court is basically ready to enter the default judgment. We're going to talk about her bizarre response in a minute. So Rebecca Schofield is a professor, and I'm just going to call her professor. I'm going to try to minimize how often I say her name, but it's Rebecca Schofield versus Ashley Gillard, and it's filed in the U.S. District Court in Iowa. And basically, you can see here the complaint, and what it says is that defendant Ashley Gillard, a purported internet sleuth, decided to use the community's pain from the horrible crimes that happened for her online self-promotion. She has posted many videos on TikTok falsely stating that plaintiff Rebecca Schofield, a professor at the university, participated in the crimes because she was romantically involved with one of the students. Gillard's statements are false. And so that's the premise of the complaint. These multiple times that this Ashley person went on claiming she somehow knew the whole scenario, and there was this conspiracy with the professor to end the lives of these students, and it's all because of some romantic liaison, which is all nonsense. And there's absolutely no proof. The professor is in no way, shape, or form a suspect. The police have completely cleared her. She wasn't even in the state when all of this happened, and so it's just absurd. And so they talk about her TikToks that weren't based on facts or information known to Gillard, and that she's posted multiple TikToks falsely alleging that Professor Schofield ordered and planned the crimes against the 4 students. That's the basis of it. They're asking for damages because clearly this is harmed, even though it's not true. It's harmed the reputation of the professor, her name, like they say in the complaint. Now when you do a search for her name, it's linked in the search algorithm with this horrible crime. And so, you know, that's forever going to be true, probably. I have so much sympathy for this professor. She knew that her statements were false. I'm sure she knew they're false. How could she possibly know? Ashley Gillard's in Texas. She's nowhere near the crime scene, doesn't know any of the people involved, has no knowledge of this professor. She couldn't possibly have a clue what's going on. And yet she insisted somehow she knew exactly what happened. So you'll see, I'll put up a picture here of one of her TikToks where she basically is egging on the professor about the lawsuit and making it sound like, oh, I'm so excited to go to court. And she knew when the lawsuit was filed because she made videos about it and talked about it. And yet she failed to respond. And so, of course, they filed a motion for a default judgment against her, which is, I've told you guys before, That's what happens when you don't respond, and this has happened to the Ace family. When they didn't respond to the Beverly Hills lawsuit, the default judgment entered against them. Well, now, Ashley Gillard has come back, filed a motion with the court to remove the default, and she's filed her answer, and she's also got counterclaims, so she's countersuing the professor, and it's batshit crazy. So here is Ashley Gillard. This is her motion to remove the default. I don't understand why she's doing this, because answer and counterclaims go together. So in other words, when you file the answer, you put in your counterclaim. She's got this memorandum of law in support of her motion from relief from judgment, so to remove the default. For some reason, she's now calling herself the counterclaim plaintiff or the plaintiff in counterclaim. That's not appropriate in this particular motion. It should just be the regular, what we call caption, because this is not the answer. Here is some of the bizarre things she had to say about why the court should grant her motion. And she says, first of all, she admits that she failed to plead, and she says that the reason is because of excusable neglect and fraud or misconduct by opposing parties. So excusable neglect is a term that courts use to mean like there was a mistake that happened, or, you know, something happened by accident, and for some reason a deadline was missed, or, you know, an attorney or a party forgot to file something, and it's called excusable neglect, meaning they didn't intentionally not file, it just somehow fell off the radar. Okay, and the courts have a fairly broad leeway with granting those motions. So she's claiming excusable neglect, which it certainly is not, but she's claiming fraud, misconduct by opposing parties. So I have no idea what she's talking about. All the other side did was refute the statements, multiple statements that Ashley Gillard made against the professor. And they went on the media, of course, to counteract, because there were millions of people viewing these TikToks, so they tried to counter it as best they could in the media. And so Ashley Gillard's claiming that they've now defamed her because of what they've said to the press, which is absolutely absurd because they were just responding to her. But she says she did not timely respond due to being overwhelmed with multiple civil actions and responsibilities. So I looked up, apparently she's got an eviction pending, or had an eviction pending against her. So she's claiming that that distracted her and she couldn't juggle it. But she found time to make TikToks. And it's weird because she talks about herself in the third person all the time. She says, Ashley Gillard, Ashley Gillard, Ashley Gillard, instead of me or I. Please let me preface this by saying I'm not mocking the circumstances about what she says. I'm mocking the fact that it's just utter nonsense that this is how she's trying to excuse her conduct. Apparently a family member was sick. She doesn't say who, but she says she chose to support her family member during that time. And she says she also had multiple attempts by someone to enter her apartment. Now, what that has to do with this case, I don't know. This is where she talks about the fraud. Usually when you're in a civil case and you're talking about fraud, you're talking about that the other party, you know, defrauded you in a contract. So she's claiming fraud because the statements she says that the attorneys for the professor made to the media refuting what Ashley Gillard says were false. And she says that the intent of these statements was to humiliate. Okay, the gall of this person, you guys, makes me sick to my stomach. She goes, the attorneys, the statements they made about Ashley Gillard's false statements had the intent to humiliate, embarrass, harass, and intimidate her for the plaintiff's benefit, the professor's benefit. They're talking about the fact that what Ashley Gillard is telling the public is untrue. So they're just defending the professor. They're not making statements against Ashley. They're just saying, no, you're saying things that are false, okay? So this is definitely not a defamation case, in my opinion. You know, she talks about how the false statements about Ashley Gillard went out to social media channels, and she received hateful messages on her social media, her emails, phone, website, and she got threats against her from strangers, and this caused her emotional distress. Okay, I think probably it's not the fact that they said you lied. It's the fact that what you said and the fact that it's glaringly, in my opinion, untrue, incensed a lot of people against you. It has nothing to do with the professor. You brought that on yourself. You should have known what you were getting into when you decided to go down this rabbit hole. And she claims she didn't get served the motion for the default, which If I had $1 for every time somebody said that in court, I didn't get it. Most likely she did. And she claims that the default judgment will cause prejudice to her. And this is true, as much as I hate to say it. Okay, so let me explain. Because a default judgment is not a judgment on the merits of the case. It's default because of a technicality. So failing to respond, default. But that doesn't mean that what the professor says in her lawsuit is true because it hasn't been tried. Okay, and so what she's saying is a default judgment, because it hasn't been tried on its merits, is prejudicial to her. That's true. And the courts give a lot of latitude before they will issue, because to have a default judgment and not a judgment based on the merits is inherently going to be unfair. Okay, so even though it's her fault, and in this case, I don't think the court should give it to her, but that's usually the premise for why people end up getting a default removed. And trust me, I literally encounter this almost on a weekly basis, okay? I actually have a motion hearing tomorrow on a defendant who's filed a motion to remove a default judgment. She's saying she should be allowed to defend herself, okay? And so then she files her answer and then counterclaims against the professor and her attorneys. And it's just so bizarre. You're not gonna believe this. She says, Ashley Gillard partially denies the allegation in the first sentence of the complaint pertaining to the allegation that Rebecca Schofield is an individual. Huh? She's disputing the fact that the professor is a person? This makes no sense. These are her defenses. She says the venue's improper because Ashley Gillard lives in Texas and the professor lives in Idaho. Well, normally that would be true for a regular lawsuit because you generally have to sue a defendant where a defendant lives. In federal court, first of all, the federal court has jurisdiction if it's over $75,000 and the parties have diversity, which means they live in different states. Not only does the professor live in Idaho, but the crimes took place in Idaho. The police that Ashley talks about is in Idaho, and everything she talks about happened in Idaho. So I would say that even though she lives in Texas, I don't think she's going to win on this. This is a bizarre one. And again, I'm not going to go over all of them. I just picked out the ones I thought were most bizarre. She says the plaintiff's claims are barred by the substantial truth doctrine pursuant to Masson versus New Yorker magazine, and this was a 1991 case decided by the Supreme Court. I have no idea what she's talking about. I looked at that case. It pertained to a journalist basically altering quotes from somebody they interviewed. The court held that it wasn't libel because the meaning of what the person said was still the same, even though the quotes were slightly altered. This has nothing to do with this case. Okay, so she's citing a case in what we call on point. It's not on point because the facts aren't similar to the facts in this case. So this ruling has absolutely nothing to do with what's being alleged here. So I don't know where she pulled that out of her butt. Then she goes on to say that she made her statements in all of this conspiracy nonsense in the interest of public safety because she was trying to warn the public that the real perpetrator was still on the loose. Absolute ridiculousness because she, again, has no basis to have knowledge either way of whether that's true or not. So she says, discovering and revealing the crimes with the intent to get them investigated and arrested, I guess she means someone arrested, is an act to warn others about harm or danger. So she's trying to say that all of this conspiracy nonsense she spouted and these statements she made defaming this poor professor are all in the interest of public safety, because she wanted people to know that the real perpetrator was still on the loose. Absolute nonsense. And then she says that's freedom of expression. Well, the First Amendment, my friend, does not give you the right to defame somebody and make up stories and ruin somebody's reputation. That is not protected by the First Amendment. So you lose on that one too. And then she says they are barred because of comparative negligence. Now, comparative negligence is when, say, like you're in a car accident and you say, yes, I hit him, but he was making an illegal turn, okay? So that's comparative negligence. So the party that was injured is partially responsible for the accident. So it's called comparative negligence. So the negligence is on both sides. Well, she's claiming that the professor is at least 51% at fault for being accused of the allegations. Therefore, the professor may not recover damages. So she's saying because the professor is mostly at fault, she's not entitled. And if this was a car accident, she'd be correct. But she's 51% guilty of being falsely accused of something? It's nonsense. See, folks, this is why you don't practice law from the internet. You get a lawyer, okay? She says that the attorney executed a strategy to discredit, embarrass, humiliate, and ruin her character by disseminating false statements in a press release, which again, I think maybe a press conference, but not a press release, because this isn't a PR firm or a PR stunt, that was disseminated worldwide and most of the major news outlets in America. So she's saying all of their statements refuting what she has said are untrue, and they have now defamed her because of that. And she says that these false statements against her incited an online riot against her. Okay, an online riot? What is an online riot? Because people started leaving negative comments for her and sending her basically hate mail and things. But that, again, I don't think that's because of what the professor said. I think that's because people know that what you said is absolute baloney. She goes on to name a bunch of people who latched onto the story, and she talks about YouTube personality iNabber, who has over 933,000 subscribers, said that her mental state was nutty and falsely accused her of ruining an innocent woman's life. Okay, this is not even appropriate because the professor is not responsible for something somebody else says about you. That's not how it worked. Then she talks about Callum Markey. I don't know if you've ever seen him. I like his videos. He published a video to his 376,000 subscribers called TikTok Psychic Lies About Innocent Woman to Ruin Her Life. Okay, again, what Callum Markey says about her has nothing to do with the professor. Okay, now this is what kills me. Remember at the beginning I said she was complaining because she said that the jurisdiction and the venue were not appropriate because she lives in Texas? Well, for her counterclaim, she says under jurisdiction venue, jurisdiction is proper under, and she names the statute, because there is diversity of citizenship and the amount in controversy exceeds 75 grand. And venue is appropriate for the counterclaim because Rebecca Schofield is a resident of Idaho. She's trying to explain why this lawsuit should be dismissed because she says it's improperly been brought in the Idaho U.S. District Court. And then under her counterclaims, she's saying that the jurisdiction and venue are fine. Okay, make up your mind. She's claiming that the professor brought this suit against her, knowing that it was frivolous because the statements that Ashley made about the professor are substantially true. How she would even have any idea about that, I don't know. And the professor was trying to avoid a criminal investigation. Absolute nonsense, okay? Then she says that the attorney made these statements refuting the claims Ashley Gillard made with actual malice. So she's defending her client and saying things to defend her client out of malice, which is, again, absurd, okay? Then she says Ashley Gillard's reputation was severely damaged across the United States and social media due to the false statements spread by Rebecca Schofield and attorney Wendy Olson. Well, no. I think you did that to yourself. I think you sabotaged your own reputation. And I think the fact that you kept doubling down and insisting, even though I believe that you knew what you were saying was absolute fiction, you kept insisting that you were in the right and you pursued it. And in fact, Ashley Gillard in this countersuit in her answer are just affirming the fact. She's basically doubling down again by reiterating all of the nonsense and the untruths that she perpetuated on TikTok. She's putting them again. So again, she's using the excuse that, the police department asked for people's help in trying to solve this, and anybody that knew or saw anything, like they frequently do. And Ashley Gillard is claiming that she was just trying to help. Okay. And then this is what she wants. This is her prayer for relief. This is what she wants the court to order the professor to do. She wants a mass press release with a statement that Ashley Gillard approves. So she wants to prove it before it goes out to every news outlet that this lawsuit was covered. I'm assuming she means that covered this lawsuit. And to social media outlets Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Reddit, and all others that it was covered on, correcting the false claims made against Ashley Gillard. She also wants a mass press release in every news outlet that this lawsuit was covered, and to social media outlets with an apology to Ashley Gillard that she approves for all the accusations made against her. The only accusations made against her is that she told a bunch of lies. So unless Ashley Gillard has evidence to the contrary, that is not defamatory, okay? What they said in defense of their client is not defamatory. And then she also asked for them to dismiss for improper venue. So, of course, when she filed this motion, the plaintiff, the professor, and her attorneys have filed their opposition to removing the default. And like I said, usually the court will give you pretty broad leeway because of equity concerns, and they will generally remove a default unless there's really a good reason why they shouldn't. And in this instance, I think there probably is a good reason. And basically, that's what the professor's attorneys say to the court. In this rare instance, because usually the court will grant it, and they point to all the facts that show that Ashley knew that the lawsuit was going on, and she knew that it had been filed, and she deliberately and mockingly decided not to answer it. And so because of her defiance of the lawsuit, they're saying to the court, she knew all about it. She just chose not to answer. And it wasn't until she was threatened with the default judgment that she finally did something. And they're saying, so because of how malicious all of this really has been, they don't think the court should grant her motion to remove the default. Will the court agree with them? I don't know. I think that they have a very good argument. You know, ultimately, I don't know. The court usually grants these things, so we'll have to wait and see. But I think their argument is good. So that wraps it up, guys. Please don't join the hate wagon and send Ashley any hate. There are enough people doing that. You don't need to do it. Let me know down in the comments what you think. Do you agree this is absolutely insane? Let me know what you think. Thank you guys so much for joining me, for all your support. Thanks to our Patreon patrons. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to our channel members. All of your support. I got something from Amazon, and somebody bought me a bunch of coffees. So I want to thank Julie from Crafty Beach for the cat treats. Thank you so much, you guys. All the stuff you guys send, we are so grateful for. I've actually updated the Amazon wish list. So if you want to send something, it's down below. I'd be happy to give you a shout out. And I want to thank Susie, who sent me 5 coffees. So thank you, Susie, for the buy me a coffee. I really appreciate it. You guys are the best. You guys, please take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next one.
Pretty please. Subscribe, like, and hit the bell. I get a treat for every new sub. Thank you.